is a lesson in how not to write a paragraph about selection criteria, that is to say, inclusion and exclusion criteria. Let me read this because it's going to make more sense when I go back and tell you what's wrong with it. We included 108 parents of children with intracranial tumors admitted to our department from January 2019 to September 2020. Inclusion criteria were: 1, diagnosis following the NCCN guidelines for central nervous system tumors; 2, ability to read and write with no abnormalities of cognitive or mental status; and 3, provision of written informed consent. Exclusion criteria were: 1, dysfunctions in reading, writing, or cognition; and 2, refusal to participate. One thing jumps out at you when you read this paragraph. The first is that the exclusion criteria are the opposite of the inclusion criteria. There is no reason to state inclusion criteria if it is not obvious that those who do not meet inclusion criteria are ipso facto excluded. Okay? This is the main point that I want you to remember. An exclusion criterion is not the opposite of an inclusion criterion. You must choose other criteria that exclude a subject from your study. And the second mistake that is made here is provision of written consent, written informed consent. Consent is prior to consideration of selection. If a patient or a subject does not give consent, then you don't need to bother to analyze their inclusion or exclusion criteria. It is assumed that if you are going through this process that they have given consent. Therefore, this needs to go and this needs to go. It's obvious that if a subject refuses to cooperate or to participate, that they are excluded. That comes first. And finally, just remember, an exclusion criterion is not the opposite of an inclusion criterion.